right. Well, I'm excited to be sitting here with Aaron today. Aaron is a new um, practitioner for the Red Beard team, and he's a somatic experiencing practitioner, among other things as well. And so I thought it would be cool to sit down with Aaron and just hear a little bit about your practice and what brought you to SE. Can you take a minute just to sort of introduce yourself and where you are and what you've been up to, Aaron?
Sure, Alex, thanks. Yeah, I'm based out of Seattle, Washington, but my SE practice has been virtual for the past 3 years, which has been great. Um, I'm up here. I've been doing SE for about 7 years. Before that, I was doing massage therapy since 2004. Um, Also been actively a partner dancer in the Seattle world, actively a communication and personal growth nerd just for most of my adult life. And so it's been neat to just kind of go from doing a lot of more informal relational stuff like the communication stuff and the dancing and all that, and then moving into like a professional realm where I actually get to use all that and work with people and like this sort of interpersonal healing journey. It's been really great.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Can I ask you just a minute about the communication work? I'm imagining that's sort of the nonviolent communication or
Mhm.
related. Do you
Mhm.
just share a little bit about that part of your work?
Yeah, I don't remember what started it, but fresh out of college, my father actually started just giving me all these book recommendations. He was reading this book about neuro-linguistic programming that had all these like little tricks for changing how you think about things and how you perceive the world. And he gave me a book of nonviolent communication, like how to resolve conflict compassionately, how to step out of a place of judgment and into a place of sort of seeing the underlying needs we all share. And it kind of opened me up to realizing that there are people out there who have put a great deal of thought into understanding the human mind, understanding relationships, learning how to resolve conflict more peacefully, learning how to like tap into our own innate creativity and come up with ideas that like we might have been blocked to before. And so I spent a good 5 or 10 years just like consuming lots of books on these topics and finding study buddies. And I'd read one book and I'd say, who do I know that's into this? And I'd find this person. We'd go meet every week and practice some skill
Mm,
set, and it was just like a lot of fun.
mm,
um and then when I discovered SE, and it was sort of seemed like a kind of a place where I could take all these random things that I had been studied but didn't have any like specific way to orient them. And I was
mm.
saying, oh, each of the things I've studied put into this sort of container of somatic experiencing can actually be really helpful to people rather than just sort of like a hobby of like, let's communicate better.
Right, right, right. Oh,
Yeah.
very cool. So it's safe to say that all that communication study has found a home within the SE container now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about your kind of SE journey and story. How, do you remember how it first came on your radar?
Yeah. So SE came on my radar as a friend of mine was seeing an SE therapist. And she was describing to me how they would, notice her making a gesture with her hand and have her slow it down. And then she'd feel all these really big feelings. And so she was so surprised by it. And I was instantly just fascinated because I'd been studying body language and I'd been studying these kinds of therapies, but I'd never heard of this before. And so with her permission, I actually met her therapist for coffee, and he ran me through like the basic theory of SE and recommended I start seeing one of his colleagues. So I started receiving sessions, and about 3 to 4 months of weekly sessions was like life changing in a way that I had been trying to do on my own and like not quite getting there on my own. But then working with this person, I was like, holy cow, like I'm getting more effective in my life. I'm more productive in my life. I have more determination. Like it was all these things were like falling into place. And
Wow.
um, so then when the opportunity to take the training came along, I thought, oh, I should probably jump on this because it seems like it's something that's going to be important to me.
Awesome. I mean, you sort of just alluded to it, but is there any way to, without revealing anything you don't want to, like, is there any way to speak to, yeah, it sounded like a lot happened in those several months when it was new for you.
Mhm.
Anything else you could say about just what happened for you in that initial period?
Yeah, it's not super personal because I mean it's one of the things I think is neat about somatic experiencing is it's both personal but also potentially not personal because you don't have to be talking about like the really personal stuff.
Hmm.
Um my practitioner noticed that if I started to get activated, if I started to get angry or excited or anything, he saw my activation would go to a certain level and then it would just like peter out. I would make a joke, I would sing a song, I would change the subject, I'd go into like, but everybody's okay. I would just find some way to like peter it out.
Mm,
And he's told me, he's like, what we're going to do here is we're going to build your nervous system's capacity so that that energy doesn't just peter out at a 3, maybe it builds to a 5, maybe it builds to a 6. And he's like, and as your container, your ability to hold that energy grows, I think you're going to just start seeing that things in life will be easier. You're going to get more done without having to work harder. You're going to be able to stand up for yourself more without having to like really like feel like you're doing something different. It's just going to be easier.
mm,
I thought that sounds neat. Like, let's try that. And then
yeah.
I did a kind of a check-in 3 months later. And like in those 3 months, I had like implemented like this completely different organizational system that I was following. I had like gotten a job as a teacher of massage therapy, which I never would have had the guts to do. It was all these like things that I had taken on, and I still felt like myself. And I didn't feel like I was burning the candle at both ends. I just had more availability to these
Mm.
this energy to take care of things.
How would you explain SE to someone who really doesn't know what it is?
Yeah. I have explained SE in so many different ways to people. It's a technique to help people access their like internal resources. I mean, that's the very simplest way to put it is, you know, whenever you do something in the world, like accomplish a goal, tackle an obstacle, whenever you handle anything out in the world, there needs to be something inside that happens, right? You need to be able to access the energy to engage in conflict, access the energy to engage in a project. And then after the project's over, you need to be able to sort of settle and recover from whatever you just did.
Mm,
And there's a lot of resources out there for the external part. How do you do that external thing? How do you set the boundaries? How do you handle this project? But I think SE is a way to approach the inside and say, how do we make the path so clear a path so the energy inside you is able to build and flow outwards so that you can take care of the things you're going to do? And how do we clear a path so that after you've done those things, after you engage in the conflict or whatever it is, that you then have the capacity to settle and return to a place where you feel safe, you feel connected to the people around you, you're able to appreciate beauty. It's sort of the internal side of life.
mm. That's a good
Um,
way to put it. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, I could go on about like the theory of it, but at least in terms of like how it helps people, it's it helps people by helping them have full access to their own resources and feel more like themselves, hopefully.
What are some of the clients that you find yourself working with? The kinds of situations you work with a lot with SC?
One of the things that I find myself increasingly passionate about is helping people get comfortable with things that are related to anger. So whether it's actually being angry or if it's just feeling like just enough irritation to say, no, I don't really want to go out to that party. Like, you don't think you need to be angry to say no to a party, but you need to at least have a little bit of that sense of, I don't want that. And I find that a lot of people have been sort of taught from an early age that to feel that much, I don't want that, there's something bad about that. Like maybe they feel this instinctive like shame or they feel guilty to even say, I don't want to go to this party.
Mm,
And I find it incredibly gratifying to work with people and help like re-access that confidence that like it's okay to say I don't want that. It's okay to say, dude, don't talk to me like that. That their bodies can get comfortable holding that anger or holding that irritation or holding the dislike enough to express it and kind of reshape their whole world into something where they're doing the things they want to be doing and they're saying no to the things they don't want to be doing.
it sounds a little bit connected to the concept of kind of boundaries, knowing our boundaries, speaking from them. Do you
Yeah,
see a connection there?
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I often will say that I do a lot of boundary work with people,
Yeah,
even though I'm not necessarily practicing. I'm not like telling them, you know, say set the boundary this way. I'm not like coaching them in how to set the boundary so much as helping them connect to the energy inside that they would need to set a boundary.
to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Great. Yeah. Okay. So that's a theme you work with a lot. Yeah. Anything else? Anything else that you sort of find yourself? any other kind of topics or situations you kind of gravitate towards with SE?
Yeah, the flip side of that is there's a lot of folks out there who, in our world and like Western society especially, we can be really amped up. And a lot of folks like they work really hard, they're pushing the pedal to the metal all the time. And it gets to the point where even when they get home at the end of the day, they never really feel done. Like they don't feel done with their responsibilities, they don't feel done with their obligations. It's hard for them to sit down and eat a peaceful meal and watch the sunset because they just have to leap out of their chair every 5 minutes to go take care of this thing they just remembered.
Mm,
And that's also something that I really love to work with is helping people re-access that feeling of doneness so their bodies can actually decompress from all the hard work they've been doing, yeah, and
mm,
actually settle into a place where like, wow, okay, I did a lot today, I'm going to really enjoy my night, I'm going to feel really comfortable, I actually feel peaceful, settled, safe, it's really nice. And then tomorrow will be a new day and I'll work really hard again. But to actually have this balance where they can have a flow of like activation, deactivation as
mm.
appropriate, rather than just being amped up all the time until they crash and they're just exhausted for who knows how long. Like,
Right.
I really love having moments with clients where they start to, report to me that like, oh, I just sat on the couch and chilled out for 20 minutes yesterday. It felt amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any one sort of SE theory element or an SE concept that, I don't know, you kind of like or you'd want to explain just briefly for us?
Yeah. There's a lot of really good ones. One that I find myself thinking about a lot is the concept of a coupling dynamic. So, just to notice when often if we feel a certain feeling, say you feel some joy or you feel some anger. I was talking about anger earlier. That's a good example. Um, if someone feels anger and then they instantly feel shame, and it gets to the point where it's not a whole sequence of thoughts. It's not like they got angry and they were reflecting on it and they realized that actually, I yelled at that person and it probably hurt them and now I feel shame. Like that's a process that like results in a conclusion. But when it
Mhm.
gets to the point where it's so tight that they just feel anger and then shame instantly, and it has
Yep.
nothing to do with the content, it has nothing to do with what happened, just the feeling of anger is now linked to the feeling of shame. That's what like in SE they call a coupling dynamic.
Right.
And in my opinion, that's not the most optimal situation because it's no longer like shame is showing up only in a useful, like
Mhm.
appropriate situation. It's showing up like out of habit.
Yeah, it's a
And
habit.
then,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a habit. And then that's going to mean that like anger will become intolerable
Mhm.
because shame is a pretty intolerable feeling usually.
Mhm.
So now like anger is just like eliminated from the emotional repertoire,
Mhm.
and all the useful things that anger can do, like that we talked about earlier with setting boundaries, with
Mhm.
speaking your needs to people, with, all these things, it just becomes so hard to access because you don't want to feel shame. So you just like shut off anger.
Mhm.
So NSC will work to like uncouple something or, like to find the space between the anger and the shame so that you can see the little glimmer of light in between and realize they're not exactly the same thing. And
Mhm.
then, over time, over multiple sessions, and maybe make a little bit of ease so that one doesn't on automatically lead to the other.
Open-ended. Anything else SE related that you want to share or think about or?
Not, but I've been talking to a lot of people about the difference between somatic experiencing and like more traditional psychotherapy. Um, and obviously there's a million kinds of psychotherapy and there's a million ways to do somatic experiencing. But
Mhm.
one thing that someone remarked on recently was um, SE can have a sense of like we're doing exercises or we're doing intentional process to get to this specific result.
Mhm.
Whereas a lot of like modes of psychotherapy can be more explorative.
Mhm.
Like we're going to take this topic and we're going to explore it and build understanding and build a more like deep, nuanced like awareness of it. And so when you say let's work on this in therapy, that might mean let's talk about this. Let's think of different examples of this. Let's just explore. And when we say let's work on this in somatic experiencing, that might mean let's do some specific exercises to uncouple those two feelings, or let's do some specific exercises to release the energetic charge of that stressful event.
Yeah.
So there's a more like, there could be a like, we're going to do this thing versus we're going to explore and like just fully talk about and flesh out this thing.
Mm.
um and that's been on my mind lately as something to sort of talk about with people and like get clear on, like, are you in a place right now where you want to explore and like deepen understanding, or are you in a place where you want to like do something to kind of create a shift or make some space in somewhere? For
Mhm.
sure. And sometimes I think people maybe need part of the time to explore it, part of the time to kind of talk it out and feel it out, and then another part of the time to like tackle it and do like the more like structured work. So it's just kind of finding that balance with people and saying,
Yeah.
where's their drive? Because like someone's coming in for any kind of healing work, they're going to have a sort of what feels important to them and where their drive is. And so
Mm.
I think finding that and kind of getting on the same page of like how are we spending the time is like really important.
Yeah. All right. Great. Okay. Anything else?
I don't think so. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to, work with the folks who reach out.